I have a problem with my compressed air. Whenever I use it, it comes out very, very wet. And I tried a couple of different setups. I don't have it attached anymore, but I tried buying a cheap little setup from Harbor Freight with a desiccant water remover, and it was mounted here. But within about 1 week, the thing died and stopped working, and you couldn't change out the desiccant because the desiccant thing was broken shut and you couldn't open it. And there was a pressure regulator that I also bought from Harbor Freight that also took a crap at the same time. So I have no idea what that's about, but it didn't work. So I went above and beyond and got a really fancy setup from a company called RTI, which is actually a local company to my area. And their products are mainly intended for places doing really high-end stuff, like doing paint booths for an automotive shop and where they need really dry, clean air. And I ended up buying this setup, which is their Elimenex combo, which is the front end to a bigger system, but for my purposes at the moment will probably be good enough. And then I got a nice Parker air regulator with a little pressure valve on it. And I need to set that whole setup into a much larger setup and have this long copper pipe that's 2 inches in diameter, is what I went with anyways. And basically the idea of this is you have your air compressor, and then it hooks into this whole setup, and it goes up your wall about 10 feet and back down about 10 feet. And this will actually cool all the air that's in your tank down, and it should condensate most of the water down to this valve that you just empty once in a while. And then that will get your air conditioned into a nice state to then get out the rest of the water and oils in there and continue down into your system, and you should have pretty clean air coming out here. And you can go much further and get it much more clean and just perfect, but for right now, until I get any fancy equipment, I think this setup will work. Unfortunately, this setup cost me a pretty penny. Just these materials here cost around $1,100 or $1,200, and that's largely due to this copper pipe being so darn expensive. But, you know, as they say, you buy once, cry once. So that's what I'm going with this time, because I already bought once and cried once because I bought the cheap setup that then broke right away. So hopefully this will do me for a long time. The problem that I have is I have never done any copper soldering, and I want to try to do this myself because I like learning new skills. And the problem that I have with using such a large diameter is that I was, from my research, using the small propane or even MAP gas cylinders really doesn't get it hot enough, or you really need to know what you're doing to get it hot enough with a small container. So for these larger ones, I actually went out and finally purchased a acetylene setup, Oxy Acetylene, which again, I also haven't ever used before. So I get to learn a bunch of new skills today. I'm going to be learning how to use that. I'm going to be learning how to solder in general, and I'm going to be hopefully not screwing this up. I'm going to start first with these smaller fittings here and try and do that with the small bottle here, because I should be able to do that way. And I will work my way up as I hopefully get sufficient with mating these smaller fittings together. Then I can move up to the big ones. So follow me as I learn all of this. And I'll put a link to the videos that I found most helpful down in the description. And if you're new to this, you can see that you can probably do it too. Just follow the videos that I'll link to you, and I'll add my tidbits that I learned along the way. And together we will all be sufficient copper pipe solderers. The first couple of joints that I'm going to work with are these three here. And I'm going to start with the smallest joint because it should require the least amount of heat and material, and hopefully will be the easiest to do. For smaller pipes, they actually make a special tool that you can use to clean them, and it's essentially this. I have this kit that's a general purpose kit that's actually really comes in handy all the time. It's only like 25 bucks or something on Amazon. They're steel, nylon and brass little wire brush things of different sizes, and you can use them directly in this little screwdriver thing or put them in your drill if you want to get real aggressive with it. And I'm going to just use that because it's basically the same tool, but general purpose, and try that on this smaller one. Let's see how it works on this guy. Okay, pretty good. So I've cleaned the inside of this one and the outside of this one, and now they can go together and solder. But now I got to put a little bit of flux on here. Okay. So just have a little minimum amount, I think, on there. And I can put them together. So I'm going to just set that to the side and go on to the next one. I had to step away and everything's nice and cool. Once again, got to clean these all up. So I'm going to start with this one on the outside. And now I got to do this one on the inside. I'm going to try using that little drill, see if I can kind of work it around, but I don't think it'll work quite right. So see what happens. Actually does seem to be working pretty good. Actually, it worked really good, I think. Now I got to set up the Oxy Acetylene. So there's all kinds of different things that I learned about Oxy Acetylene. You want to use it for over 1 inch. That's the ideal setup for it. Essentially, there's 3 types of flames. I don't know what they are offhand. You can watch the videos that'll explain it. But there's a really hot, tiny flame. You can have a secondary flame that's a different color. And then there's like a big flamey looking flame that's out here that's a third. And you can have all kinds of combinations of that. One's oxidizing, one's carburizing, and then in between. And you're looking for something like a neutral flame. You really want to be brazing with the middle flame color because it's not too hot that you'll actually melt it. This closest flame is the hottest. And you kind of want to work in this region. But going anywhere from having that little hot flame to that third flamey flame, it'll be really in this area you want to be working with when you're brazing because it gets hot, but not too hot that you melt the copper. That's how I understand it. That's what I'm about to do. So hopefully it works and I don't melt anything because that would suck. And again, I'm not going to use a ton of flux. I'm going to line it up the way I want it. Now that I'm thinking more about it, I'm going to clean off this little lip of flux. All right, please don't screw this up. And I'm really bad at this part. I don't know if this is a crappy lighter or... Ooh! Okay, I don't know if it really shows up on camera, but I now have 3 different flames. There's a really hot one down here, a medium hot one, and a big hot one. Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing here. This is much different, but hopefully I won't screw it up. And this is going to be much hotter. Okay, we've either made a big mess or very successful. Yeah, this was much different. It definitely is a hotter process. Okay, the next thing I need to do is put one of these ends on one of the copper pipes. What's important, and I don't know how much it matters with compressed air, but you want to keep the inside edge, if this was a cut pipe, deburred, because it'll actually create turbulence in there. Now with compressed air, I don't think it matters so much, but I've got the deburring tool. It does have a little bit of a burr on it. And I just have this on there to protect the threads because that's that exposed one. And now we do this again. So I don't need that this close. Oh Lordy. I don't know if I did well or not. Really couldn't tell you. Now the orientation of this doesn't matter yet. That'll all come together at the last stage. Oh no. Well, that's funny. Got a little too hot and this one fell out. But it does show you that I did a good job. Fully soldered. One little cavity. Shoot. You know, I knew I was working close to there. This got so hot because it was right here, the same, basically touching where this one meets it. Melted out. Shoot. Well, since I'm already here, I will fix that. All right, so I couldn't find anything that gave me a very concise answer to my dilemma of what do I do now that the solder is on both sides and it fell out. So what I'm going to do here is improvise. It looks like what I can do, make sure these are clean again, and so I can put this back in there, put a little bit of flux on here, put it in, heat it up, and it should solder back together because this has some solder flakes in it. But I'll do that and I'll sort of add a little extra line of it to make myself feel good and probably make a mess inside the pipe that I can't see anymore and call it a day. And hopefully it won't leak and I won't need it to be fixed for me. Okay, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Did I fix it? Maybe. I hope so. Oh God, what a mess I'm sure I've created. Here I have 3 more joints to do and then I'm done. I can't wait to find out how much this thing leaks. Now, the final assembly I need to make is putting this and this onto these 2 pipes and making sure that the pipe at the bottom, the fitting is 90 degrees out. That's going to be a little bit tricky here, but I think I can pull it off. Okay, I've got the answer. I've got this plane level with this plane. Now I can move this out here. Move this whole assembly over. Dang close. Here is going to be the hardest joint because I can't cheat and go around it and move it around and anything, so I'm just gonna have to do it and not screw it up. Okay, in theory I'm done. I strongly suspect that I'm not even close and I've got lots of problems, but you know, stay positive. Now I'll wait for this to dry and work on the other part. Before I take too much time to get this all in a nice, beautiful orientation, I'm just gonna work in the mess that I have over here. Basically, the connection that I need to make to that system is via this flexible line. It's just a rubber 3/4 inch tube. And the key to my success is that this can spin, because if one side is fixed and the other side is fixed, you can't put it together with a regular like female or whatever line. It needs to be able to spin until tight. So I bought this hose on McMaster to do that. Oh God, I'm making a mess. This is what happens when you don't clean your work area up. Okay, now for the time being, I'm I'm gonna just add a couple of shutoff valves so I can have a sealed system. I'm just gonna pressure test this thing. For this guy, because this should be once and done for these fittings, I'm gonna try using pipe thread sealant. I've actually never used this before. I've always used tape. So I'm gonna try this instead. Okay, so in theory that side is sealed. This should be the last connection. And now I can put this on here. Now, taking bets in the comments on if you think this is going to leak or not. And remember, I've never done this before, and I'm doing something advanced with a large diameter pipe, so place your bets. Okay, turn on the air compressor. Okay, I put it up to 50 PSI. Now I'm gonna open the valve, and it should be a closed loop. Let's see. I'm gonna open up the main valve. Oh. Oh my God. Did I succeed? I don't hear anything. Okay, I'm gonna go up to full pressure. Right now my air compressor maxes out at about 145. That's just a setting on it. It can go up to like 175, I think, but that's all I use it at the moment, so I will test it at full pressure. Holy crap. Anybody who doubted me, y'all lose. So it seems to work, so now all I need to do is figure out how to put it on the wall, which I haven't thought about yet. And attach those pieces. That's just a matter of putting thread and stuff together, so pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do is actually close this off and let it hold pressure overnight and see if anything changes. Maybe it'll lose pressure, maybe not, but you know, stuff's not perfect, so if it loses a little pressure, that's not overly surprising. But if I come back in the morning and it still has pressure, that pretty much confirms that this thing is very much so solid. Now that everything has cooled off as well, I'm going to go ahead and clean all the flux off the outside because that's all I can do now. And I'm going to call it a night and come back tomorrow. Okay, it's been about 12 hours since I sealed this up and called it a night. So let's see if there's still some pressure in here. Oh yeah. So as far as I can say, I'd say this thing held pressure perfectly fine, didn't really have any leaks. Of course, if I had a pressure gauge on here, I could check more formally, but I don't, and I can't open it back the other way because it just doesn't work. So, yeah, I'd say that's good. That's a lot of pressure coming out of there. At this point, I'm going to call this tube good. The flattest surface I have to work with is the floor, so I'll do this part of the assembly on the floor. Always have a sufficient supply of dollies on hand. How I'm going to go about attaching this, I think, is with some 3D printed brackets. And before I go ahead and print full-size versions, I want to make sure my dimensions are correct and will give me the output that I'm looking for. And first thing to make sure this will work. A little saddle like this, and I made just a very thin version of it that gives me the profile, so I'll know if the parts will fit in where they need to. This big one, each one will take like 4 or 5 hours until it's all said and done, so these will take a while. The smaller one, I assume an hour or two. But that's what I'm going to try to do here. hopefully it succeeds. All right, so the ceiling is 166 inches, and I'm going to give it an inch of clearance so that I can move it around easily enough. I just want to decide which way I want to cut it. And the offcut I'm going to use as the horizontal piece for all the other parts. That might disappear. I think I'll cut it on this side. Nice. Just a little bit of clearance at the top. And now I'll mount it to here as high up as I can get it so that I have as much access at the bottom to the gauges and whatnot. Whoa. Now this is where it all comes together. Got these guys go in their various spots. So that's the idea here. Pretty straightforward. Cap on the back of that as I need. And the only other thing I need to decide is how I want to join these two pieces together. I think I'm going to go with pocket holes because I have a pocket hole jig and that's pretty straightforward. And then this thing should be ready to go up on the wall. I'm really happy with how these 3D printed parts came out though. They fit in quite nicely. Get that under there and it just fits perfectly. I can tighten it down. Okay, well, it's certainly in there tight. See how it works. Going forward, things I didn't consider in this is any kind of expansion in this pipe, so that'll be something I'll need to sort of pay attention to. If this gets warmer, you know, it might get bigger. I didn't consider that, so hopefully this won't be a problem. And if it is, I'll redo it. You know, probably it won't. I don't think it'll just fail and fall off the wall at any point. I'm not too worried about that. But you know, it might crack or something if it does have some thermal expansion problems. So I'll have to keep an eye on that and think about that. But right now, in its current condition, it seems good. Now I'm set up over here to put this one in. And then mounting holes on both sides. All right, now that is very rigidly attached. That's not going anywhere. Got two on this side, two on that side. That puppy is in. All right. So this is now one big assembly. Let's do one final pressure test before I put this thing up. Where I want this to go right now is back here. And because it's so close to the ceiling, I need to get it behind this. I actually need to move my air compressor out a little bit so I can kind of sneak it in. And on top of that, I need to not hit the garage rail. This is going to be even harder. I got a screw in up there, so it's in place now. And in an infinite show of my wisdom and sanity, I'm going to climb up here like this and do the last one. I'm opening it on the air compressor. Opening this line. Okay. Now, obviously this is not the ideal setup to have this behind my air compressor where all the valves and stuff are hard to get to. But this air compressor is ultimately going outside in a shed that I'm going to build, and that should be coming up relatively soon. But for now it sits here, and very likely this setup will stay in this location. I'm going to mess with this for a little bit, see if I can learn anything, get some water to drain out and whatever. It's been running for like 10 or 15 minutes, just blowing air, compressing. So this side, the downside is showing 67, 68, and the hot side, 84. So it's certainly doing something. Saying that's about 70. About 66, which makes sense. It's doing something over there. It gets a little bit cooler by the time it gets over here. So now I'm going to see if there's any water that gets collected. I don't know if much will get collected in this amount of time. Okay, well, collected a little bit of water right now, which, I mean, that's good. It's in there and it's not, didn't come out the airport. What's important is if this is wet, and this has been running continuously, and this is dry as can be. No, not moist to the touch at all. And well, I guess I can give that a look, see if anything is there. Now these have auto drains, so a little bit of water. Just a little bit of water in there. All right, so a little bit more liquid that was collected, but certainly not much in that run. But it's my understanding that these don't need to be drained all that frequently. So, even though it's just that much liquid that's held in there, I don't think I have to drain it all that often. So we'll see as I use it, but obviously it's collecting water. It seems to be working and I'm not seeing any water come out the ends. I think I was successful with all this. That makes me very happy. Surprisingly, I didn't have a single complication along the whole way. Everything worked the first time. And without a real solid plan of where I was going with this, I just had the general idea from my research. It all seems to have come together just right. Now, I'll have to decide how I want to hook this up to my air system. I've got a reel, I'll probably just set that back up. But for the time being, it seems that I have nice dry air. It's definitely way drier than it was coming out before. I expect when I start using my air tools, they won't have water oozing out of them like they have been. That's the system. I'm real happy with it, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, have a good one. Still smells like soldering.